well, why don't I hop in? This may end up being a rather short episode, just because it's a pretty precise film. There's not a lot to really mess around with.
Yeah. Well, as the title says, it's totally fine, you know? So it's like one phrase off of what the title is.
Exactly. So I'm Totally Fine is from 2022, last year, and it is about Vanessa, a woman in mourning, takes a solo trip to clear her head after the death of her friend, but her self-care vacation plans change when she's met with an out of this world situation. It's directed by Brandon Dermer and written by Alicia Ketry. And their kind of collaboration on this is really what made it as special as it is, I think.
Mm,
Them bringing in these different uh, experiences and just bringing it to life. And then also the contribution of the actors,
mhm,
Jillian Bell and Natalie Morales. So, um, what I'm Totally Fine is a really charming, simple film that explores grief, anxiety, and the weight of unresolved loss. And in it, we see Vanessa as she travels to a remote house for what was meant to be a celebration. Her and her best friend Jennifer had successfully secured a distribution deal for their organic soda that they had made together. Only
mm,
the day has taken a sour turn because Vanessa is alone and Jennifer is no longer with us. And only and she bumbles about struggling through the fog and lethargy of loss while trying to cancel the party.
mhm.
It's kind of that like you have these responsibilities and she's really trying to push to get to those. But you're also just like you don't want to move, like you don't want to do it because
Mhm.
then it's like final, right? Like having to cancel this party means that's real.
Yeah.
Jennifer's gone, you know?
Mhm.
And so she's struggling to cancel this party only to be told that she can't because she missed the deadline for cancellation and she is required to have a party, which is absurd. It's such a great opening scene. It is a very funny film. I thought it was going to be silly and it definitely is, but there are some truly just like absurd moments that I think the acting is what really drives it home. So fun. And so Vanessa parties alone. She pushes down her complicated emotions, a feeling of true loss paired with disappointment, resentment, and a sense of unfairness, which she kind of explores throughout the film. And Jennifer had left her here to pick up the pieces all alone. The morning after her drunken antics, after trying her best to party alone, she wakes and encounters Jennifer in the kitchen. And convinced that she's finally lost it and snapped at the loss of her lifelong best friend, she just like leaves. She just
She's
walks
like, "No,
away.
I'm not gonna
Uh,
do this. We're not gonna deal with this right now."
and then so like when she's kind of going back and forth, like Kat and I were talking about it too. It's just like I think I probably would be like, I have lost it. I
Yeah.
have this is it. That was the final straw. Um
Take me
like
away, my sweet escape. Like, it's time
this
to
is
go.
it. I
Yeah.
gave it a good try. And this is I mean if that's like my turn into like losing any stability mentally is in
Mhm.
envisioning someone I lost just being there, leave me alone. Okay? Put me away
Yeah.
and I'll just hang out with them. What is the problem?
Yeah,
Just
just,
leave
like,
me
let
be.
it be.
It's fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Let
It's
me alone.
totally fine, Gabe.
I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
And so she just leaves, like she like walks out and she's like, okay, that was crazy. I'm just like still drunk. What's going on?
Yeah.
Grief is weird. And then, as like the moments go by, there's Jennifer again. Except this Jennifer is strange. Her words are clipped and robotic and like confused. And Vanessa learns that this is not Jennifer at all, but is instead an alien wearing her face.
As they do,
Um,
you know?
and this is where Nellie is so funny. She's just like, "Please do not leave again." Her speech is just very hilarious.
Yeah, the cadence.
Yeah, the cadence is great, and it's just like the it's such like an alien thing to do and say. Like,
Yeah.
I have made you a drink. Um, and
Yeah, you
and
just never really finds, like, the The cadence, yeah, like, it's just, like, always just, like, slightly off where you're like, "You're not a person." And that's
Yeah.
fine, but also, like, what is? I also enjoyed that both you and Isaiah said that I talk like that sometimes, and I was like, "I enjoy that."
Yes. You
That is
words good.
fun. I words so well.
Yeah, so honestly, if an alien was there wearing your face, I would be like, "What are you talking about? They're normal."
Yeah, I
That is
don't
just cat.
know. Yeah, I don't know if this is any different, so,
Like, "Do you not realize?" I do not realize.
yeah, it seems pretty suspicious at that point.
Yeah, so sh
Practical joke, I guess, I don't know.
yeah. But, apparently this Jennifer is an alien that has
Mhm.
been sent here to study Vanessa and her grief, and as a gift for participation, she gets to spend 2 days, with her dead best friend,
Yeah,
which is nice. Turns out it's not actually 2 days, just spoilers, but, she gets a long time. And
yeah,
when you think about just that premise alone, like, what if you could spend, like, a day with someone that you know is gone, that you didn't get to say goodbye to or, like,
yeah,
resolve anything? Like, that's
yeah,
super heavy and just, like, a gift, like, on it like, it seems silly because it's like, "Here is orientation for humans." This is like, "If you participate, you get to hang out with me." And it's like, "Cool, yeah, I'm crazy, so whatever." But then you're like, "Wait,
yeah,
that would be that would be really something." Like, it's super emotional. And what happens throughout is a funny mix of scenes where Vanessa works to reason the situation away while they do all these like tests of her humanness. They're so silly. It's very goofy. It really just feels like two friends running around the house doing weird
yeah,
stuff. And it's a limited cast, so it's like super cool. But she, like, Vanessa works to create an explanation for every interaction, right? So in one scene, the alien wants to know how well she can swim and hold her breath, and Vanessa thinks, oh yeah, because me and Jennifer had been in swim club, so my
yeah,
brain is inventing this situation to cope with my grief.
yeah.
Like, she's really trying. She's like, okay,
We're making connections. It's
grief is
like that.
hard.
Yeah,
Cutting myself some slack in like the cheapest way possible kind of thing.
yeah,
But it's not until Alien Jennifer reveals information that Vanessa was never supposed to know. Once the secret was confirmed, one Jennifer had sworn to take to the grave and technically did,
yeah,
that Vanessa realizes this may not be a hallucination after all, because there's no way that she
yeah,
knew that, right? she,
yeah,
and so deciding to take advantage of the alien Jennifer, they share more secrets, emotions, and memories. And alien Jennifer is quick to confirm Vanessa's memories, letting her know that Jennifer loved you a lot, or Jennifer lied to you to protect your feelings. And it's this kind of confirmation, and it's also something that you kind of do when you're exploring grief yourself, right? You're reminding yourself of who that person was and what they meant to you, and that
yeah,
you got to keep on living because that's what they would want you to do. It's definitely the
yeah,
stages of grief, because she definitely starts with like confusion and then like anger. Goes through all the steps, and we've talked about grief many times, and it does
yeah.
look different for everyone. For this person, it looks like an alien. So, um, yeah, it's super, super fun and sad.
Yeah.
Very sad. It's like it's hard because you're like, oh,
Oh, yeah,
oh. So just be
yeah,
prepared for that. But throughout this adventure, Vanessa is forced to confront her loss, but more importantly, her reluctance to feel and explore her grief, because the whole time she's been playing it cool. I'm totally fine. So she
mhm,
is pushed forward, working to convince her boyfriend and herself that she is okay, that she is totally fine. But alien Jennifer reveals the truth, that she's far from okay and hasn't been for a long time, even before Jennifer left. There were some issues that she has to work through, considering like anxiety and control issues, learning to let go and just breathe, and chill. So, um, Vanessa feels cheated, like her person was stolen unexpectedly and too soon. And a bizarrely kind but rude stranger later questions her about her business agreement, asking if they had had a mortality clause in their contract. And of course, they didn't, because no one's expecting mortality to rear its ugly head in such a sudden and cruel way.
Mhm.
Like Jennifer is very young, and it was an ailment that, they never would have caught. Just
Yeah.
given the way that life was. And of course, you think of all kinds of excuses or
Like what ifs
what
and
ifs. Like, had I done this, then she could have insurance and she would have went. And it's like, from what I know of Jennifer, I don't think she was going to the doctor,
yeah.
regardless of insurance. So, but it's like throughout her interaction with the alien Jennifer, and then also with um the stranger, she's like having to kind of confirm all those things that she's been hiding.
Mhm.
And as Vanessa forms a connection with Alien Jennifer, learning to not only accept the emotions she has as a human, but to appreciate them, learning that our emotions make us unique and powerful and truly human. And after losing Jennifer again, this time in the form of an alien visitor, Vanessa finally admits that she's not totally fine, but that's okay,
Yeah.
which is very strong, like a very
Mhm.
strong thing to get to, right? Um,
Yeah.
and what I found, like when we were watching it, like Kat and I talked about this too, is like there's a limited cast. Harvey Guillen is in there, adorable as ever. As their
Mhm.
DJ, he DJs for them like solo, and it's so cute. Like they're just dancing together. It's such a great scene, and he's
Yeah,
like,
and even just like some range from him too, because it's like I never and ever would imagine him being a DJ and like having him play that role so well. I was like, wow, he's just a really good actor.
yeah, he's like fun and cute, and he's just like, getting into it. So I loved that. I just love anything he's in. But it's also just like it's all very heavily related to these actors and the small team making this happen. And what I found interesting was like the motivation for the film and some of the other parts. So I wanted to talk about kind of the making of the film, some like outside of just the film situation things. And in an interview that Kat found, thank you, with director Brandon Dermer on Odyssey KRLD News Radio, titled "I'm Totally Fine," puts a comedic spin on grief. The director explains his inspiration for the film, saying it was 2020. Like everyone, the rug was pulled out from under us. For me, my anxiety is such, and the pandemic obviously was like the uncertainty cranked up to 11. Like every day we were learning something new. It was really stressful. And I started to realize that the moment I stopped trying to control this thing that was out of my control, out of everyone's control, I could be a little bit more happy and present. I wanted to sort of synthesize that feeling into a story in a way that, in an alien, something that is most foreign, out of this world concept, because that's what it felt like we were living through.
Mhm.
Um, an out of world concept. But as I said, one of the most interesting parts of the film was how stripped down it was, featuring minimal locations. It's mostly just the house and the roads near the house.
Mhm.
That's pretty much it. There's a few characters, one of which, Vanessa's boyfriend, is only ever seen through a video call. Like
Mhm.
that's it. There's like three, four, because Harvey. So like four people that we see on
Mhm.
screen, like in person. And the film was shot in just 10 days, which is really cool. And I think we
Yeah.
learn like to value these limited productions, especially during COVID times, because it's like, oh, we can do this. Like we can rely more on like person stories than just like cool effects and location situations.
Yeah.
Um, and really, originally, just fun fact, Dermer intended for actor Gillian Bell to play Jennifer, the alien. But when she read the script, she felt much more attached to Vanessa because, as Derman explains, the actress Bell had lost her father 10 years ago, and she knew exactly, beat by beat, what we were viewing following the stages of grief.
Mm.
And so that influenced the way that she, you know, was acting and like changing up the script.
Mhm.
For Morales, they would adjust it to kind of fit her cadence and the way that she talked and what she thought would be appropriate for this alien. So that's kind of fun.
Mhm.
I love a collaborative environment. And I just found that, like, losing someone is such a specific and traumatic event that sticks with you. And so Vanessa's grief felt personal and relatable, and something that I really appreciated. Like, it
Mhm.
wasn't over the top dramatic, it wasn't shouting at us about our pain, but instead was that reserved grief that we face alone in the dark of night when everyone else has gone to sleep and left us with our thoughts, worries, and regrets. And you're
Mhm.
just like stared at a wall. And you're just like,
Yeah.
uh oh, I was quiet for too long and now here they
The
come.
thoughts are here. Yeah, you can't escape it when you're by yourself. That's like one of the biggest things that honestly, like I know in my experience, but I've also heard like other people talk about is that like when you finally stop moving and you have no one to distract you, it all kind of sneaks up in a very real way. And you just
Hmm.
have to deal with it.
Yeah. And then you're like stuck, like, oh, I wasn't ready to do that. And it's like, you were never going to be ready to do that.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's going to happen now, or it's going to happen at some point. You're going to
Yeah.
have to deal with it. And I think, like, that's why I just really like, she spends so much of this time in the film, and it's just her in this house. And like,
Hmm.
you could see she's like distracting herself. You can see parts of where her anxiety comes through that I also very much like related to just in regular life, like her
Hmm.
having to, like, losing Jennifer and losing the time that she felt was guaranteed with this friend,
Hmm.
had her realizing like how much of her life she is losing because she's so caught up in her anxiety and worries and concerns and need for control. Like, she
Hmm.
just keep like, she was like, oh, we could have secured this deal a long time ago, but I held this back because I wanted to make sure of things. It's like, oh, they could have been celebrating this a long time ago. Oh, they could have already had like health insurance. Like, there's all these things that like she was holding herself back from because we have this perceived idea that like we have infinite time and we don't. And
Hmm.
so that just felt very real to me, and just like the way that she was like compartmentalizing like her grief until it was like,
Hmm.
hi, I am your grief here to to talk
Yeah.
to you in the in the flesh. And she's like, oh god.
Yeah. I'm not ready. Please
This
stop.
is what happens when you don't talk about your feelings. You make them up, and now there's an alien in my house.
Yeah.
Um, but Vanessa's desperation to hold on to alien Jennifer felt really raw and real. Um, I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, that hurt really bad because it was like seeing her if she had had the opportunity to
Mhm.
predict what was going to happen to Jennifer. And so, with her attempts to keep the alien friend, even this pale imitation of her longest and best of friends, here with her was a feeling that I could sit with and I could relate to. And for director Derner, he has hopes for the impact of this film, hoping that it inspires us to value the time that we do have, especially during these uncertain times, as we've been told to refer to them. And he said, we really hope that this movie inspires people to like reach out to someone maybe you haven't, because life is short and precious. And like every morning, it's really hard to remember that in the midst of this crazy world we live in.
Mhm.
Um, and I relate.
Yeah.
Super for it. So
Yeah. And the pandemic did that a lot too, though. We're like forced to slow down in a way that we hadn't previously and be like, oh, wow, I have a family. You're so right. I should have talked to them. But
yeah.
capitalism has you going to work every day. And that's like the most important thing because you need money to survive. So you like end up, unfortunately, neglecting relationships that you
Hmm.
otherwise like kind of wanted to because you like think like, well, it's fine. Next month, I'll really talk to people. Next month, I'll have the energy to be there for the people I care about. And it's like, that's not how stuff works,
Hmm.
sadly.
Yeah.
So,
It's also like, the pandemic really forced people to slow down. Like, I
mhm.
personally know that. Like, I mean, I still do a bunch of things, but it took me a while before I could build up even to where I am now. I was always constantly moving, moving, moving. And it
Mhm.
took like that forcing me to stop to be like, wait a second. I should have been
Yeah.
doing this a long time ago. And you learn to like reevaluate things that matter. You find like joy in like other parts of life because you're not just like, let me just go, 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 deal
Yeah.
with my stuff. And you can now like have these intimate relationships.
Yeah. And it's also like, everyone's like, we need to get back to normal. And it's like normal wasn't work. Normal was bad. Normal
Normal
sucked.
didn't do it. Yeah.
Normal was just like survival mode, and that's not how we should be in all the time. But yeah, I really appreciated this film and like the way that it showcased grief in a I don't know, in a way that you can't escape from it, and that's like really real. And that they
Mhm.
had to go through this party because I was like very much like you have to keep going in life, and like when you're dealing with grief, like very recently, like you don't get to just like sit there and grieve. You have to build. If you just are like inheriting stuff, you have to do the estate. You have to plan a funeral. You
Mhm.
have to throw the party. The party is the funeral. Also, like
Mhm.
you have
Mhm.
to do all those things.
Gotta
You
do
don't
the
get to
paperwork.
stop. Yeah, you have to call the lawyers. You got to do all these like steps that no one teaches you how to do. And then like that whole like agreement in there too is like everyone should make a will.
Mhm. Mhm.
Everyone, as someone who's recently gone through, make a will. You need to. It's just like, and that's like how they didn't have the clause because she was young. It's like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you need to set yourself up so that people who are mourning you have ability to do that. When you build up these like securities, you give them more time to just like kind of sit and stare at it and be like, dang, this is hard.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I
So,
think like, another thing of the pandemic is that it forced us to see our mortality, right? Like
mhm,
like all of a sudden people had to get really real about the potential to lose people that we loved, and there was
yeah,
2 going on 3 years in which people were, you know, losing people, and it was all
mhm,
unexpected, and so we had to do that. And I think, and we talked about this too, this kind of like how we don't really, as a American culture, don't have a good relationship with death and
yeah.
with losing people, and like understanding what, like, because it very much is like, okay, we pick up and we have to put it behind you now,
You
and
just
you
have to
move
keep
on.
going. You gotta go, go, go. You can't stop. You can't look at it.
Yeah.
You never are able to stop. That's like the entire thing.
Yeah, and you can't think
Um,
about it either. Like, we can't, because it's such a negative thing. Like, you don't want to be forgotten. You don't want to, so you don't want to think about the potential that that could happen to you or to someone you love. So then we don't take those precautions instead of like other countries where, they have entire festivals or celebrations or anniversaries or just traditions where you are inviting these people that you
mhm.
lost back into your life, and like celebrating their life even after death, and like having that in there allows you to have like a better understanding of or appreciation for like what your life is now, and also prepare for what is going to happen to all of us.
Yeah.
One of us.
Not looking at the death is also like something that's like really hard because it's like, there are other cultures that have different death practices that are very like closure
Mhm.
bringing, and
Mhm.
that we don't really have that here. And I still like viscerally remember like when my grandpa had passed, like someone just being like, you gotta, I understand what you're going through or whatever, but like you have to get it together because like
Yeah.
you have to work. And I was like, I remember being like so shook by that because I was like
Yeah.
20, I don't know. And I was just like, no,
Mhm.
absolutely not. And I was like, well, you're right. Damn, I do gotta do this. And it's like you really just never get to like heal from it. It elongates the grieving process because you never really get to stop and look at it and be like, oh,
Mhm.
you're forced to keep going in a way that like is not present in some other cultures. And it's like kind
Yeah.
of cruel the way America
It
does
is.
grieving practices and death.
Yeah, and it's like it's
Yeah.
because also it's like even with family, right? Like if it's not a direct family person, like then you get zero sympathy. And it's like, okay,
Hmm.
that person was like family because family's not the only thing that matters. Okay. Like sometimes we have people in our lives who matter more or equal to what our family would mean. And if they're gone, we have the same amount of grief. We have the same amount of mourning that we have to do. And you're like, oh, that was a friend of the family. They don't count. You can't take off work. It's like,
Yeah.
"Are you get what?" Like, this person was here and is not here anymore. That's a lot of stuff we gotta
Yeah.
go through. You just want me to come in and
Yeah, and I mean,
function
people don't want it
normal.
for even if it is like your dad or like your direct
Yeah.
person, like whoever it is, they don't care anyway. Like a lot of
Mhm.
times, there are jobs that like are nice and do care, but
Mhm.
it's rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it could be like your literal best friend in the entire world. They're like, well, okay, do we have to give you these bereavement days? And it's like legally, yes, but not everyone knows, like what kind of protections you do have, even if it is like a close family member.
Mhm.
um the
Yeah.
company, it's like insurance companies, they like don't want to give it to you. So
Mhm.
you like really got to advocate for yourself. And like that's cruel in of itself because when you're grieving, you don't really have the mental capacity to do that. Because
Mhm.
you're just like, I just want to stop. I don't want to do any
Yeah.
of this. Why are you making me have to think? That's even worse. Like, yeah.
Yeah. That's why
Americans
it's
for us
like
at the end of the day.
our PSA for this episode for our show today is to get life insurance, to make a will, regardless of your age and how infinite you think you're going to live. Have those preparations, be quick to update them as your life changes and grows.
Yeah.
Um, and also, appreciate the people that are here while they're here is a big
Mhm.
motivational point as well, in valuing like our emotions on that scale.
Yeah.
But also, like, when people are gone, I say, like, try to find some of your own traditions or your own practices that you can have to continue to have them in your life and in some way, if that like is something that would bring you joy.
Yeah. And yeah, at the end of the day, people just need to have more empathy. So like I do think the pandemic and COVID also like brought loss to people in a way that they had not experienced before, where like a lot of people experienced it. It was like a mass loss event. So like more people were forced into having to understand what loss was and like
Hmm.
build that kind of empathy. And hopefully that ends up doing positive things. And that like people are like, oh, I also have lost someone. So now I feel more empathy for this person who is in front of me dealing with that. Uh,
I'd
here's
like to
hoping.
think so, but there's so many people who are like, no.
I've
Like, people who
only had
aren't taking care of each
experiences.
other,
Yeah.
like not wearing a
Yeah.
mask. Like, how hard
Yeah.
are people like, I don't care, you don't feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish,
I
but
wish too.
people
Yeah,
be
you're so
people
right.
in.
People be people.